All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. With the expanded conferences in college football, as well as the expanded college football playoff, it's fair enough to say that some of these top teams in the sport could meet twice this year, or in some cases, three times. We've seen some rematches over the years when it came to bowl season and in the playoff. Several that pop right off the head and come to mind. I think about Florida and Florida State. They met in 1996 when they were 1-2 in the polls. Florida State won in Tallahassee, and then they met that January in the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, which basically turned out to be the de facto national championship game. You think back to Alabama and LSU meeting in 2011 twice. They met in a 9-6 game during the regular season, which was won by LSU in Tuscaloosa. And then, of course, the Crimson Tide shut out LSU 21 to nothing in the BCS championship game. And then, of course, Alabama and Georgia a couple of years ago. We saw them meet in the SEC championship game. And then they met in the college football national championship game. We're seeing it this year with some of these mega conferences. You think about it, the Big 12's at 16, the SEC's at 16, the ACC is at 17, and then, of course, the Big 10 is at 18. We've seen some high profile games already this season. Some of those at first, I thought when we saw Alabama, Georgia meet a couple of weeks ago, that we could see those two teams meet three times. I don't see it happening right now due to the fact that Alabama has lost twice and they really don't have that much wiggle room to make the playoff at this point, more or less even get to the SEC championship game. I think Ohio State, Oregon is a potential candidate for that. We saw them face off a couple of weeks ago in Eugene in a thriller. And then, of course, the game this past Saturday, even though it was one sided in favor of Georgia, I still do think Georgia and Texas could meet multiple times this year. And I'm also going to throw out the possibility of Ohio State and Penn State. They meet later this season. There's a possibility of both of them getting to the Big Ten championship game and also possibly meeting in the playoff. And this is just some. But at the end of the day, this is a new era of college football. Okay. We've seen it in college basketball where conference foes might face off four times throughout the year, twice during the regular season, once in their respective conference tournament. And if both of them are fortunate enough to get to the Final Four, they can meet up there. I think back to the 2001 NCAA tournament where Duke and Maryland met each other four times that year, and Duke won three of those contests. And of course, the big one being the national semifinal, as Duke was en route to win the national championship. But you look at it and you ask yourself, what is the likelihood that we're going to see at least one gridiron trilogy this year? I think there's a pretty good possibility. I know that, Texas took it on the chin this past Saturday night at home, courtesy of Georgia. But I still feel like both of those teams have the ability to get to Atlanta for the SEC championship game. And then, of course, both of them are right in the mix to make the college football playoff. I feel like that in regards to Ohio State and Oregon. I'm really interested to see the meeting that Penn State and Ohio State are going to have in several weeks as well. It's one of those where you think about the trilogies. It's definitely going to come from a Power Four league because the other leagues, the group of five leagues, if you will, group of six now, it's one of those where it's going to be a scenario where, yeah, you could have teams there, meet twice, but I really don't see a scenario where multiple non-power conferences, teams from non-power conferences are going to be afforded the opportunity to get to the college football playoff. One example of that, you look at Boise State and UNLV, they're getting ready to face off in a contest this Friday night, a key game as far as the inside track to winning the Mountain West. And then there's a very good possibility that both of them are going to meet twice again, because both of them, to me, are the two best teams in the Mountain West. But of course, the Mountain West is not going to get multiple teams. They'll be lucky if they get one bid, which I do think that they have the inside track for as far as the non power schools go. But this is a new wave because we have the expanded conferences for the most part, most of these leagues have done away with the divisional format. So, like, it's all about the top dogs, if you will, from the respective conferences facing off and, in a battle to get a higher seed for the college football playoff. More than likely, as far as the trilogies go, I think if we are going to see them, I believe it's going to come from either the Big 12 or the SEC. I really do feel that these two leagues are going to dominate uh, the bids for the upcoming playoff. We got a 12-team playoff set to debut this year. I'd expect six, maybe seven of those bids to be shared between the Big Ten and SEC. Like I said, it's the dawn of a new day in college football. Clearly, not winning your conference or even reaching your conference title game will prevent teams from getting to the playoff. We have seen it in the past where teams didn't, reach their conference championship game, and of course, in some cases, even win their conference and get to the playoffs. I mean, look, you go back to 2011 when it was Alabama and LSU playing for the national championship. Clearly, both of those teams played in the SEC West at the time, so only one of those teams was going to get to Atlanta for the conference championship game. And then, of course, that year we saw LSU blow the doors off of Georgia to win the conference. You think back several years ago when both Alabama and Georgia made the 14 playoff, and one of them didn't make the college football. I mean, the SEC championship game. That was Alabama. They benefited from Georgia knocking off Auburn and handily in the SEC championship game, and then Alabama got a bid, and of course, the rest is history. But this is the new era, and of course, it's something that the powers that be agreed upon, and let's just see how things work out. So, who's most likely to meet three times this college football season? I really think it's either going to be Georgia and Texas or Ohio State, Oregon, if I had a dog in the race as far as this goes. I know that Georgia went on the road emphatically, beat Texas. That was a statement win right there by Georgia, especially after they lost on the road earlier this season in Alabama. I think Texas rebounds. I still think they have what it takes to get to Atlanta for the national champion, for the SEC championship game, excuse me. And then, of course, it's a good possibility they'll be facing Georgia there. And of course, I think both of these teams have what it takes to not only get to the college football playoff, but also be big time players in that tournament. We're about midway through this college football season. Nothing has been decided. We're starting to see who the true contenders are to try to get to the playoff. And there's a lot of contenders out there. And of course, as the games go by, as the weeks go by, that pool of contenders, of course, is going to diminish. But nonetheless, I think we are in store for a good stretch run in college football, which of course will carry over to conference championship week as well as the college football playoff. The name of the game is excitement, and this college football season has plenty of it. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now, you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I'm signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.